So, everyone, I would like to welcome you all, both the members of university and also our guests. Today is a great pleasure for me to introduce you Mr. Peter Bech. He is my both colleague and friend. I'm very delighted to work with him in the past with some other project, and I know he is very in sales and marketing.
He's turning up the expectations.
But this is reality. So it's just setting the expectation correctly. So enjoy the coming 1 hour, after which we are going to have a Q&A. Welcome once.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Peter Bech. I'm a Dane. I come from Copenhagen in Denmark. And it will be my pleasure to entertain you here on a Friday afternoon. I think that's a tough job anywhere in the world, on the subject of selling information technology in the 21st century. I need to say thank you very much to Josef Soner for giving me this platform to address you here today on a subject that is very close to my heart. And also I need to thank Fikret Idil here on the first row from TBK Consult in Istanbul for organizing my visit to Istanbul this week. I was doing a lecture yesterday at the ITU for a group of entrepreneurs. And that's obviously people who want to start their own business. And somebody had already started their own business. I don't know if you want to start your own business or whether you have a business. If you're looking for a job in some business, I think there is something for you in this presentation today as well. If you want, you are welcome to take pictures and make comments and tweet them. You can use this hashtag HPPGL. And if you want to follow the Twitter wall, I have a Twitter wall here where you can follow the conversation. If you have any questions you want to direct to me that I can answer or I can try to answer, use this hashtag as well. I will follow this hashtag and I will get back to you individually. If you want a copy of the presentation, send me a tweet and I will make sure that you get the URL for the presentation. Selling information technology in the 21st century, I can tell you already now that that's going to be more difficult than it was in the previous century. And I think I have some good news also for you. And I have a little bonus subject down here, which is called Software is Eating the World. So when I say information technology, I'm primarily talking about software and the internet. I'm not talking so much about hardware. And what does that mean? Well, I'll get to that. But what do I mean with selling? And what's so special about information technology? And what does the 21st century have in store for us? This is what we call a value chain. And I will explain to you what that is. This is an information technology software industry value chain. Over here, we define what we want to do, what kind of services, what kind of products we will develop, and for whom we will develop them. That's called the strategy exercise. SPM stands for Software Product Management. And I think by the end of the presentation, you will understand why it's not just product management, it's software product management, because software is very different from other type of services and products. The objective of our strategic exercises, if we're a startup, is to develop attractive customer value propositions and to know to whom we should sell them, our ideal customer profile. And before we rush out into the market and scale our activities, we need a list of satisfied customers that'll say what these guys and girls do is really, really good. When you're ready to do that, then you can scale your revenue generation process. So when I say selling, I'm not talking about the sales transaction. I'm talking about the entire revenue generation process. And that's an important process in any business, particularly in the software industry, as I will explain through this presentation. The revenue generation process always have 4 sub-processes. It has a marketing process where we generate awareness, create bonds, engagements, create interest with our potential customers. At a certain stage, some of those customers will be interested in engaging with us in a purchase project. This is what we call a sales project. The customers buy something, we sell something. Now, also in software, not everybody is in the market all the time for everything. So from time to time, some of these people that we are communicating with on a marketing level will be interested to deal with us on an individual level. That brings us to the sales process. If we are fortunate enough to close the deal, we will enter into the delivery and implementation process. And when we've spent so much time doing marketing and sales and implementation, then we want to keep the customer for a long time. So we have a customer retention process or an account management process where we cross and upsell and hold the customers for many, many years. So that is the value chain in the software industry. It's obviously unique for each company. This is a rather complicated value chain. It's typical for an enterprise software type solution. We have a client that we have assisted with a project where the marketing stage, building the awareness and the brand, for one project took 3 years, where the sales process took 2 years, where the implementation and delivery process took 3 years. Now that's 8 years before the solution is operational. That was a $150 million US project. Those takes time. And the sales process was a public tender process. So obviously we want to keep that client, the customer, for many, many years. But the process can also just take hours. A customer finds our website, he gets interested in what we have, it's not particularly expensive, it solves a very precise need, he signs up for a trial, and it looks good, and he signs up for a subscription. So this process is different depending on the business, but there is always a process. And the process has the objective of finding, winning, making, keeping, and growing happy customers. So this is what I'm going to talk about today when I say selling. Before I dig into further details about the challenges in the 21st century and the software industry, let me introduce you to the structure of my presentation. I'll spend a few minutes talking about who I am. How am I qualified to address you today on this subject? Then I'm going to talk about software is eating the world. What is that supposed to mean? And I will introduce you to the 4 challenges of generating revenue in the software industry, because that's different from all other industries, most other industries. Then I'm going to introduce you to the 12 trends that I believe we're all facing in the software industry and the internet industry over the next 5 to 10 years that will either kill us or that we can take advantage of proactively, and they will help us grow. Now, with the challenges and the trends, I will give you 6 steps to success. So if you follow those steps, you will be successful. And then I have a little bonus thing here. That's 3 Turkish takeaways. I've been working in Turkey now for 5 years in various projects, and I made some observations about the business environment in Turkey and how you do business in an international global perspective that I would like to share with you. And you're welcome to challenge me if you think that I'm not on track here. And then we have questions and answers. It should take about an hour altogether. including what I've already spent. So who am I, and what makes me qualified to stand here and talk to you about this subject? I have a master's degree in macroeconomics and political science from the University of Copenhagen, and that was in 1977. And that doesn't make me qualified to do anything. But it did make me qualified to go directly into work for the Danish government. We are a kingdom, so we have a little king's crown on the logos. And I worked as a civil servant for the Department of Labor. But in the end, by the end of 1979, something happened to me that changed my life and made the whole world my playing ground. Somebody knocked on my door and said, Hans-Peter, you are going to become a salesman. And that was a bit far from my ambitions, but after he showed me how much salespeople make, I was more interested in starting a discussion. And I ended up taking a position with a big company, US company out of Minneapolis in Minnesota, USA, and I became a sales trainee. I spent 2 years in a sales trainee program, and after that I was a computer mainframe salesman. My job was to sell mainframe computers and software development projects. So I did that, and I was promoted to sales manager. And after 2 years, I was promoted to become entrepreneur in residence. And that's somebody who's responsible for all the new business development projects. But then a thought hit me. And that was, I'm working for an American company. They're based sort of here. And I'm selling into this tiny, tiny market. Wouldn't it make more sense if I was working for a company that was located here and selling all over the world? That would grow my market from 0.36% to 99.66% of the world market. So I accepted a job for a startup company. It was 9 engineers with a bright idea and me. And I was supposed to sell the stuff. And after a couple of months, we were ready to launch. And within 24 months, we had built a pan-European reseller network for this product, and they were actually reselling the product. And we sold the company to a British company after 4 years. So that went very well, so I did another startup with another bunch of engineers. And knowing what I knew, we now developed a pan-European reseller network in 12 months. And we even did OEM deals in the US. But we had severe product quality issues, and the company went bust. So I learned something, and that is that when you're a salesperson, you're not responsible for the product. So you better make sure it's a good product. Because it takes good products and professional marketing to make something successful. Products don't sell themselves. And we were in a situation that the more we sold, the more money we lost. And you know, that's not very sustainable. So I made a mistake. An American company knocked on my door, Data General, headquartered in Boston, and said, we need you as our country manager here in Denmark. And I said, country manager, that's a major career move. I'll accept that. But if you worked for 2 startups and been part of the executive team and owner of the company, it's very, very difficult to return as an operational, tactical foot soldier in a big organization. I worked there for 3 years, and I said, thank you very much, and I went back to another startup. Another software company that had developed software for newspapers. And I traveled all over the world and sold this package. I sold to newspapers in New Zealand, in Germany, in the US, all over the place. But I had a disagreement with the other guys in management. And where I come from, I'm a Viking, I come from the north. If you have a disagreement and you can't agree, either they go or you go, right? So I went. And I went to work for another company that was later acquired by a Belgian company, and I ended up with a company called Damgaard. Now we are now by the end of the 90s. And Damgaard was, because it doesn't exist anymore, and that's a good story, Damgaard had developed a very successful series of ERP products. If you're familiar with ERP, that's Enterprise Resource Planning as business software. But they had an issue with the global expansion. So they made a deal with IBM. IBM was to be responsible for their global distribution. Wow, what an opportunity. But it failed. And it failed because IBM couldn't execute. Because when you're standing outside and looking at such a big organization, you say, that's fantastic. When you go into the organization, you'll find out that it's small silos. And what's invented in Denmark, they don't want to hear about in Germany. There are many reasons it failed. Damgaard said, we're going to do it ourselves. And we're going to bring in a team of people to execute. We're going to take over international distribution. So I started with them, and I was given responsibility for the German-speaking markets. So I moved to Germany with my family and opened a subsidiary, hired a team, opened a subsidiary in Switzerland and then in Austria, and it was very successful. But everything was successful by the end of the 90s. We had a lot of sunshine and a lot of wind in our backs, but we were very successful. And we did an IPO in 1999, an IPO, an initial public offering. And in 2000, we merged with Navision Software, and the company became Navision. And in 2002, we sold the company for $1.5 billion to Microsoft. And that was the end of my corporate life. I wanted to start my own business, which I did. That's TBK Consult. Later on, we started TBK Publishing, which is a publishing company. And we've also started a training company. We're not competing with Sabanci. We're cooperating with Sabanci. But we do offer training for executives in the software industry. And I now have the pleasure of working for a lot of companies all over the world on what I really love, and that's global revenue generation. And in March this year, I released my third book, which has become an Amazon bestseller in global marketing. So when I'm talking to you today, I'm talking to you on a basis of my own operational experience. And obviously on the consulting I do for a lot of companies and the research I do for my books and for my clients. So this is not so much a consulting model, it's much more of an experience model. Now, software is eating the world. This was the headline of an article in the Wall Street Journal in 2011 by a gentleman called Mark Andreessen. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Andreessen. He was on the team that developed the Mosaic browser. The Mosaic browser was the first browser available for the internet that actually opened the internet to the masses. He left that, bought a license, and created Netscape. Netscape was really the first browser that everybody used on the various devices. He did an IPO, and that was good, because a few years after, the browser war started, when Microsoft bundled a free browser with their operating system. Now, it's tough for Netscape to sell a browser when somebody offers it free of charge and it comes with the computer that you buy. So there was the war. And Mark lost the war, but due to the IPO, he was a rich man, so he set up a venture capitalist investment fund in Silicon Valley, which is called Andreessen and Horowitz. He's got a very impressive portfolio of investments, including Twitter, Facebook, Box, Airbnb, and others. Very impressive. Now, what he says is the software industry is actually not just the industry of developing software. Software will penetrate all industries. Everything will be software driven. And I definitely believe he's right. If we look at one of my favorite industries, that's the music industries. The music industry. The Beatles were very fortunate to have their career in the 60s. Today, it would be very, very difficult to monetize that concept as they did. The drop in CD sales has been dramatic, and it's continuing. And it's not been made up by downloaded music and streaming from a financial point of view. We all consume, I consume a lot of music, we all consume a lot of music, but we pay much less than we paid just 10 years ago. So the music industry is an internet and software industry in terms of distribution. We still have to play the guitar and sing the songs and so on, but the distribution portion is purely digital. And the same thing is happening to the movie industry. So everything you can digitize will be disrupted by software and the internet. But even physical products, I just recently replaced all my thermostats in my house with the new line of thermostats from Danfoss. Each of them have a Wi-Fi device that is communicated with a heat sensor that I put on the wall that is communicating with a little control device in the kitchen. So I can control my heating all over the house, and even from my iPhone I can turn it up and down if I forgot something at home. Now Danfoss is a client of ours, and we've helped them with a number of things. They just recently opened a software development center in India with 400 people. Now, according to the NACE classification or the SIG classification, Danfoss is a manufacturing company. But I would say they're becoming a software company. And that happens to a lot of industries, that they're actually becoming software driven. I don't know if you had the opportunity to drive a Tesla, but that is 50% hardware and 50% software. The driving experience is very much supported by software. And even in industries where there is no software in the product, I mean, my book, there's no software in my book. It's pages and print, and it's published through our publishing company and distributed by Amazon. That is a completely digital process. So the process of supply chain management, the process of internal management will be software driven. And in all industries, the sales and marketing processes will be more and more digital, and they will be more and more software driven. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that the software industry is actually exploding. And the numbers that we see in the statistics are not really representative for how much it's growing. So if you want to start a business, this is a good place to start. Now, if you don't want to start a business, but you want a job, and you want a well-paid job, it's not a bad place to be either. So if you look at this is just an example, the best jobs of 2015, healthcare and information technology. And I'm happy to say that in a country like Turkey, there is a dramatic need for professional sales, business development sales, and marketing people in the software industry. And I'll get back to that a little later. So no matter what your ambitions are, starting a company or having a good career, this is a good place to be. And it actually already is an excellent place to be. If we look at the world's most valuable brands, Apple is number 1, Microsoft is number 2, Google is number 3, IBM is number 5, and Samsung is number 8. And we're actually helping Samsung right now to train about 300 people in software product management because they want to move more into software rather than hardware. 50% of the top 10 are technology companies. And if you add the value, it even goes to 59%. And if you go further down the list, you will see more software brands. Where do the money go? If we look at the venture capital investments in the US, and that's growing and that's nice. How much goes into information technology? 65%. So all the other industries share the 35%. If we look at the IPOs, you probably can't read them, but I can tell you that the blue is healthcare and the red is information technology. So the number of IPOs are bigger in healthcare than in information technology, but if you look at the value of the IPOs, it's the information technology that's the winner. Why is that? And why is software eating the world? Well, software is penetrating all industries and it's getting all the money. And why is that? If you look at these companies, you don't know them all. Apple and Microsoft were started by the end of the 70s, and they're now the most valuable companies in the world. I need a little information here. Google, who's number 3, was started in 1988. Salesforce, which is a brand worldwide known, started in 1999. Facebook, which is actually number 18 on that list, was started in 2004. I'll mention a few others here. HubSpot. Is anybody familiar with HubSpot? If you're in sales and marketing and have an ambition to be there, you should know who HubSpot is. They were founded in 2006. And just 8 years later, they did their IPO. Now, it took Damgard almost 15 years to get to the IPO. 16 years. These guys did it in 8 years. And they raised $125 million. And they don't even make money. Zendesk was founded in 2007 in Copenhagen, moved to San Francisco in 2009, and did an IPO. 5 years later, they raised $100 million. They have a market cap of $1.9 billion. They employ 800 people, and they sell in 140 countries. The situation is that you can start a software company with very little investment. The barriers of entry are very low. You need a Mac and some software and a connection to the internet, and you can basically, based on a bright idea, a couple of guys, girls, you can start a business. And you can scale it to an IPO within 6 years. And why is that so important? It's important for a very simple reason. What is the marginal cost of a software license? 0. Okay, we don't sell licenses anymore. It's software as a service. What is the marginal cost of adding an additional user to our cloud-based service? It's very, very little, and it's rapidly declining. So the software industry have basically no cost of goods sold. No operational expenses associated with providing the software, other than developing the software. So the economy of scale advantages in the software industry are enormous. So if you have a good idea and you want to make money on that good idea, you need to get to the market in a hurry, because it's an arm race to market leadership. Number 1, have all the benefits. Number 2, okay. Number 3, if you're on your way up. Number 4 and down, you can forget it. Because your financial infrastructure is such a disadvantage if you do not have the market leadership position. So that's why it's a wonderful place to be, but we are in a hurry. And when I'm talking about selling information technology in the 21st century, it's really about how to get it right very fast. That's the issue, and that's the challenge. And that's why we need brilliant business development, marketing, and salespeople to do that. So I'm glad that there are some of you in this room today. We are facing 4 challenges in the software industry that calls for professionalism in the revenue generation part of the value chain. This is my watch. It's a very nice watch. It's Omega Seamaster. And basically, this is what it is. When you see this picture of it, if you go to Omega's website, that's what it is. It's not very difficult to explain what it is. There is a little screw up here that I can release if I'm more than 80 meters under sea level. That doesn't happen very often, but it's a nice little feature, but that's the only thing you need to understand. This is the iWatch. Now go to the Apple website and see how difficult it is for Apple to explain what it actually is, because it's mostly invisible. It's 1% watch, but you don't buy it for a watch. It's supposed to do a lot of other stuff. It's competing for the same real estate on your body as my watch. And I will probably have one of both, but to explain me what this is takes a lot of energy and professionalism in communication. Software products, technology products, information technology products are invisible. And that's why they're very, very difficult to communicate. And that's why we need professional people to do it. Engineers have a hard time making their products simple to understand. The other issue we are facing is that the product is seldom the solution. I may have an engineering application running on a Mac, but the customer wants to build a bridge. And he needs more than just an engineering application. He needs a material requirement and project planning, and he needs a lot of stuff that needs to be integrated. The product is seldom the solution. And that's why we need intelligent business development, marketing, and salespeople to put that product into a solution context. The fourth challenge is that even if we have the best disc jockey in the world with the best sound equipment, the party is always depending on who's there. And in the software industry, the value of the product is very depending on the engagement, the involvement, the commitment of the customer. So you can have the exact same product that actually has the exact same price, but the value of the product is depending on how the customer is using the product. That makes it very, very difficult to communicate the value of a product when it's actually depending on how the user is using the product. And the fourth challenge is this. Who's familiar with this illustration? Can I see some hands? There's 1, 2. Okay. If you want to be in the software industry, you need to understand this. Let me just put that in here. In 1962, there was a Professor Rogers who came up with a theory of the diffusion of the law of diffusion of innovation. And he said, if you bring something new to the market, people will respond to it very differently. There will be a group of people that we call technology enthusiasts. That's 1.5% of the population who are very curious. They're gadget freaks. And if you bring something to the market, they'll say, hey, what's this? That's very interesting. So they want to know. They may not want to buy it, but at least they want to know about it. So they will talk to us. And then there are the visionaries. That's maybe around 10% of the population. And visionaries are always thinking, is there something out there that I can use that my competitors are not using, that will make me more competitive? So they're constantly looking for new things. So if you go to some of them and say, hey, I got something new, they will say, oh, tell me more. Now over here, we have the mainstream market. If you go to people who are pragmatists or conservatives or skeptics and say, hey, I got something new, they will be a little afraid. And they will say, who else is using it? Because they are afraid of the risk associated with you. They may want to listen to you because they may be curious, but they will not buy from you. Pragmatists, conservatives, I'll come back to those, will buy when there are a long list of references and when the technology is mature. So we can't sell to these people over here if we've got something new. The skeptics will first buy when whatever they have is completely obsolete and cannot be replaced. So what's the issue? The issue is that we always need to get to 20% market share. Why do we need to get to 20% market share? Because of the other issues that it's very difficult to communicate to the market what we do. But as soon as we get to the tipping point, the market dynamics will change. And we don't have to push so much anymore. The demand will start to pull. People will know us, we will be an accepted and recognized brand, we have a long list of references, customers will call us, our cost of sales will decline, we will get into the tornado, and our issues are not sales or revenue generation, it's fulfillment. So if we have an ambition of market leadership, and in the software industry you need that, because if you don't get a market leadership position, you eventually are going to die. So you need to get that, but you can only sell to these guys over here. So how do you jump the chasm? There is a brilliant book written about that, how to do that, and I definitely urge you to read that. But we are all faced with this scenario in the software industry. The way to overcome it, I can say, is to identify your marketing resource, sales resources on a very narrow segment that these people can relate to, and to lower the investment that is required to use your product. And that's good when we move to as a service solutions, because then we can lower the risk and lower the investment, and the chasm becomes a little smaller. So these are the 4 issues that we are always facing, and that requires professional business development, marketing, and salespeople. What are the 12 trends on top of that that we need to deal with? Who's familiar with this illustration? Joseph, I hope you teach that in your class.
Not in this class.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a business model, right? We've been talking business model. The term business model was introduced in the late 90s when the internet bubble came about, and people talked about business models, because in the old days you had a product, you sold it for a price, that was the business model. But with the internet, suddenly there was value in having visitors to your website, or people who used your product for free had a value. So you need to explain what your business model was. And everybody was talking about business model, but nobody had the same perception of what it was, until Alexander Osterwalder wrote a book about it in 2010. And he came up with this canvas with 9 building blocks. And my message here around this is that the business model is something we control completely ourselves. It's within our control. We define our own value propositions. We define who we want to sell it to. We define which channels we will take it through. And we define which type of customer relationship we will have with our customers. It's all within our control. And that will hopefully generate revenue. To drive that front office, we need to employ some key resources that do some key activities to make that happen. Maybe we need some key partners, not a lot in the software industry, and that will generate cost, and hopefully the revenue in the long run should be longer than the cost, higher than the cost, so we will have a business. That's the business model. And we use this scenario to have a communication internally to figure out how we optimize the business model. And we optimize the business model obviously to make more money, but also to react to the business model environment. Because things are coming at us from the outside, and if we don't react to it, it's going to kill us. Osterwalder introduced 4 business model environment categories. There are the trends, that's cultural changes, that's technology changes, and that's political changes and demographic changes. Then he said there are changes in the market. That's the needs and the requirements and demand from our customers. That's our demand side of the market. And there's the industry. That's our competitors, our potential partners and stakeholders with whom we can cooperate. That's the industry side. That changes all the time. And there's the economy, and that's the change in the world economy, in the balance of payments, in the capital markets, and so on. And I have identified 12 trends that we are facing in the software industry the next 5 to 10 years, and that we need to react on, otherwise they will kill our business model. And here they are. I'll take them one by one. The internet is going to increase its penetration and its speed. It's going to happen. And it will be the platform for a lot of new business models in the software industry. It will enable us to reach out to the world no matter where we're located. Location will not be important in the future. Not from, at least, it may be from a resource point of view, but we don't need manufacturing in China to sell in China. You can see here the penetration rates already. And it's quite substantial, the market that you can reach through the internet. But the global market can also reach us. So it will open the opportunities for us, but we should also expect that there will be many more competitors operating in our space. The mobile penetration, the mobile devices, pads and smartphones will increase dramatically. And that means that we in the software industry will have to figure out how we make our products available for these formats. Now, there is today already available standard adaptation of the device formats, but there is also a behavioral aspect. People don't behave the same way when they have an iPhone in the metro than when they're sitting in front of the computer. It's an additional complexity to dealing with our customers. If we can figure out how to take advantage of that, we'll be successful. If we cannot, we'll fail. Everything will become a service. We will have infrastructure as a service. What does that mean? Companies will stop buying computers for their data centers. And they will subscribe to those services from big providers such as Amazon, Asia, Microsoft, and other big players. Why should every company have their own data center? They have it today for a number of reasons: security, availability, and so on. But the advantages of having it as a service is so big that we will figure out how to solve those issues. Platforms, software platforms on which we develop software, middleware, will be available as platforms, as services, and software will be available as services, and it will be adapted by the industry. What does that mean? It means that in the last century, when we sold a software solution, there was licenses, there was hardware, and it was all paid up front, and then the customer consumed the services from the investment. With this, they will pay as they go. It's a completely change in the cash flow of what we do. And it will have a dramatic impact on the industry. There's a lot of startups, and those that I showed you on all those logos are mainly software as a service companies. And they're killing the other companies because they have a much more attractive offering. So those who came from the license model need to change very fast. The benefit, the advantage is that as a service offers a much lower entry-level price, so we can actually expand much faster, and it has another intrinsic advantage that I haven't seen used so much anymore. If you offer something as an online service, you have online insight to how your customers are using your services. And you can benchmark the customers against each other. So you can instantly respond to a customer who is apparently not using the service very well and recommend certain things to her or him that will make him more happy and keep him longer. And that means that we have, as software people, as a software industry, we have to understand statistical methods and data analytics to a much higher degree than we do today, so that we can optimize and keep the customers much longer by proving or delivering more value. The software industry is and will continue to be global. Obviously, there are software applications that need local adaptation, like financial packages, but there's a lot of software that doesn't need. I mean, project management doesn't need any adaptation other than the language to travel across borders. A lot of software don't need approval from the FDA authorities or anything. It's very easy to bring software across borders. And actually, I have to say, and I apologize, that we are helping a lot of foreign companies into Turkey. A lot of foreign software companies, because it's an interesting market. So if you don't move out to get market share, they will come here to take your domestic market share. Then let's look at the industry side. The price of anything will fall. We will fight as crazy to add more value, but the price of anything will fall. If you compare the price of software and hardware over the last 20 years, you will see a dramatic fall and an increasing capacity. That will continue. Customer acquisition costs will increase. It will be more and more difficult if we don't do anything about it. There are ways we can do things about it by using the internet and social media. I'll get back to that. But if we continue with our traditional ways of doing stuff, customer acquisition cost will increase. Technology penetration will increase also. That software is eating the world, so that's the good news. the window of opportunities will shrink. People get the same ideas at the same time all over the world. Sometimes we believe that we have a brilliant idea and we are the only one who has this brilliant idea, but that's not the case. It's proven time and time and again, people get the same ideas. And it's a race, arms race to the market. The window of opportunity in the software industry will shrink. It's no longer 15 years, it's 10 years, maybe 5 years to get market leadership position. Let's take a look at the market side. Our customers will be more experienced and they will know much more about us this century than they did last century. More experienced, better educated. Propaganda is dead. Customers don't believe what we say about ourselves and our products. First of all, they don't because they have realized that we lie all the time in marketing and sales. So they know. But they also have other sources of information. And web-based platforms and social media is here to stay. This is where your customers are. They are not in front of the television. They are not sitting waiting for you to send them a brochure. They're not reading newspapers. This is where they are. This is where they spend the bulk of their time. If we as a software company, or anybody I presume, do not come to terms with social media, we have a problem. If you're not on social media, you don't exist. And in the previous century, software solutions was dealt with by the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. He was in charge of all the computers and all the programmers and systems people. And if you wanted something that smelled of software, you needed to go through him. Those days are over. Because when you have software as a service, you don't need him. You only need a browser. And if there's no major integration to the rest of the company or corporation, you buy it yourself. It means that we're dealing with customers who are not at all IT savvy. They want easy-to-use solutions. Easy-to-use solutions are very difficult to make. So that's a challenge, but that's what they want. So these are the 12 trends that we're facing. Now, what do we do? What's the path to success? And I'll give you, and I think you're very fortunate because there are not thousands of people in here, so you will get the secrets exclusively for you, right, of how to become successful. Step number 1. You need to be ambitious. If you don't ambitiously want to be the world leader in something, it's not going to happen. It's not enough to be curious and interested. You need that burning ambition because you will meet so many obstacles. And in the software industry, things are changing so fast that if you don't have that burning ambition, you fail the raw material to overcome these obstacles. This guy's not going to take off with that device. It's his first, try. But he'll go back and eventually he will come up with something that will make him fly. But without that burning ambition, it's not going to happen. And the burning ambition is not to become rich. To become rich may inspire and motivate us personally, but it's hard to motivate anybody else to help us become rich. So we need a bigger perspective. Now I can talk long about this, but I can recommend you to read this book, Start With Why, by Simon Sinek. The ambition needs to be a heroic ambition. It's to help somebody, to make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs said. That's the raw material. If you don't have ambition, find yourself another industry. Number 2, get those posters. Buy that book. No matter if you want to start your own business or you want to make a career, you need to understand what a business model is. And you don't have time to discuss the definitions and the terminology. If you don't have this, you will spend too much time on misalignment. Get that. And work on the relationship between the customer needs, pains, and the value proposition. Without a brilliant product, at the time, nothing will work. Well, these are coming too fast. Now, how do you do that? There is plenty of resources available. Alexander Osterwalder even wrote a book called Value Proposition Design. Buy it, read it. And if you start up a company, there's a startup owner's manual who explain you how to deal with ideas and test them. And there's a guy called Eric Rice who's wrote a book called The Lean Startup, because if you start a software company, you don't have a lot of money. You need to work lean to get your product to the market and win the market leadership. Get those methodologies, those principles in your DNA. Choose your channels very carefully. Now, in the software industry, it's very popular to use indirect channels, value-added resellers, OEM, systems integrators. And I'm the first to admit that that can work very, very well. Because when Microsoft acquired Navision, a big part of that $1.5 billion was for the partner ecosystem. It was for that capability to scale the business. And today, Microsoft has 430,000 partners all over the world. Just imagine the bureaucracy if they were to employ those resources internally. Choose your channels very carefully. If you take the indirect route, remember that you lose control. You introduce a business model in your own business model. It may slow you down. It's not always the snake oil. Now, unfortunately, there's a brilliant book about exactly this subject that I can recommend you to read if you are dealing with channels. Step number 4 is accept that business development, marketing, and sales are processes. I would even say that they are engineering processes that you need to define, describe, so you can optimize them. They are social science processes, but they are processes. And they are just a reflection of our customers' buying journey. And with the internet and social media, the customers have access to information and resources that we have to adapt to. So we need to be on social media when he's looking for various, or she's looking for various options. And we need to work with SEO, with search engine optimization. We need to understand the keywords that our potential users are using. Otherwise, we are not a part of his discoveries or her discovery process, and so on and so on. So we need to get these in place, and our customer's journey should reflect our business development, marketing, and sales process. And then the big question, how do we put marketing and sales together? Because they were always two different worlds. Marketing did promotion and sales did sales. And sales thought that marketing didn't create any leads, and marketing thought that the salespeople didn't follow up on the leads. I believe, and I see that happening all the place, that sales is just 1 out of 10 marketing channels. 20, that's about, if we add it all up, there are 20 marketing channels, and sales is just one of them, and the most expensive. So sales will move further and further down the pipeline. We will use marketing approaches to communicate with potential customers very long before we hand them over to sales, because sales is expensive and it's very difficult to replicate and scale. Now, if you look over here, it's very easy to scale search engine optimization or search engine marketing. It's just to buy more AdWords. But getting more qualified salespeople, that's difficult. So that will move further down. And step number 5, we as sales and marketing people and business development people have to come to terms with social media. And I'm saying that, maybe I'm speaking for the convinced here because you're young guys and young people and young girls, but when I talk to mature business people in the software industry, they're still afraid of social media. They don't understand Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm saying, guys, you're too late. It's already going on, it's already happening. Before they call you, they know who you are. They've heard about you from other people, and maybe they don't call you because they've never seen you. We have to come to terms with social media. That's where it's happening. And finally, we need to implement lean and agile principles in sales and marketing. Sales and marketing has been sort of an art, right? There are the bright people, it's the black box, they're doing fantastic, some of them are not, and we don't exactly know how that works. We don't have the time for that. This is the lean process that we apply in TBK Consult, and it's actually very simple. Whenever we have a project, and that could be sending out an email, or it could be working on an assignment for a client, we first assess the insight we have. What do we know? And we distinguish between what we know and what we assume. And we try to clean out all prejudice. So we end up with what we know and what we assume. Based on that, we do an analysis where we say what kind of objectives are realistic for this project based on what we know and what we assume. And then we define a strategy and a plan, and the plan is who does what, when, and how much money do we have available. Then we execute, and then we measure. And when we measure, we'll say, did we underperform or did we overperform? Were our assumptions right or were they wrong? Now that sounds trivial, but you can only do this if you know what's facts and what are assumptions. And you can only do that if you can qualify your assumptions so you can test whether they're true. So it is a principle that we need to learn, not only in engineering and manufacturing, but also in sales and marketing. And we can actually measure on the internet because we have this online relationship with our communities. And then we need to implement marketing automation software. I'm still astonished by how many software companies, now I know you don't all run software companies, that do not have any software supporting their marketing processes. 10 years ago, there was hardly any software available. Now there are tons of packages and mature products available to manage the communication and engagement with our potential customers on social media and other web platforms. We need to get that in place. So if you do this, if you get these 6 steps in order, you will become successful. If not, let me know what went wrong. But this works have worked for a lot of companies, and I believe this is the way to go. So I will conclude my presentation with 3 Turkish takeaways. This is Turkey. When I'm in Istanbul, I'm overwhelmed by the size of the town, all the people here. It's a huge place. It's a very inspiring and dynamic place. But Turkey is not a big market. And sometimes we believe that it's bigger than it is. Now, I have invented something called the Bech Index, and every year we are calculating the size of the software market in all countries in the world. It's sort of, rule of thumb. And in 2014, we calculated the Turkish software market to 0.7% of the global market. That's here. Now, we're up against competitors in North America that have 40% domestic market. So obviously they can grow much bigger in that domestic market much faster before they internationalize than we can here in Turkey. Now, I come from a country which is 0.36% of the global market. We get nowhere with market leadership in Denmark. And if we start a business in Denmark with a website in Danish, how many people around the world will benefit from that? Very few. If you start a business with a website in Turkish, if you start a business with a website in English, you can reach 1.5 billion people. So my recommendation is you need to think global from the start. It's not something that you can append 5 years down the road. You don't need to go global from the start. Maybe you can do that. Some business models are global. But you need to think global from the start in your products and in your communication. Turkey is a software importing country. I don't have the official statistics of how much software you import. I know you export around 700 million US dollars last year, and that's including quite a lot of services, which I don't really consider software. It's software engineering services. I know the ambition of the country is to deliver $10 billion in software exports in 2023. And software is a wonderful thing because you don't need to import a lot to export software. So these are just the trade balance of everything in Turkey. And there seems to be a generic issue here. Now, all the big software companies are in Turkey. And we are helping even smaller companies getting into Turkey. And these companies are offering very good jobs, well-paid jobs, career opportunities. They're stealing Turkish talent. Now, it's not meant hostile, because we would do the same to them when we go to the US or the UK, but it's just a fact that if we want to build a business in Turkey reaching the world, we need to offer attractive jobs for talent. Now, there's no way that we can compete as a small unknown company with the brand of Apple and the brand of Microsoft or Oracle. And they will probably also offer better salary packages. But there are other things that are important for talent. That's the opportunity to grow. That's the opportunity to work in the headquarters. If you're working from Microsoft in Turkey, your impact on the strategy is, zero, right? You're a tactical foot soldier. It may be a nice brand and people will recognize when you say, I work for Microsoft, but your influence is zero. And if you don't perform in 2 quarters, you're out. So if you want to work in a company and have influence and really do a difference, you should work for a local Turkish company. And you will have 99.3% of the world at your disposal. And then you have some cultural peculiarities that I have been thinking about. Are you familiar with Hofstede's cultural dimensions? Some are, okay? Hofstede was the HR executive something with IBM, so his job was obviously to deal with different cultures. And he's invented this barometer of 6 cultural dimensions that he's actually rating for all countries in the world. There is a website where you can actually do this exercise with any country in the world. So I have compared Turkey to the United Kingdom and the United States. And we see that there are 3 main differences. There is a difference on power distance, individualism, and uncertainty avoidance. There's also differences on the other, but they are not so significant. Power distance is our readiness to accept that power is unevenly distributed. Where I come from, this is almost zero. We don't respect anybody for who they are. We only respect people for what they do. In Turkey, that is pretty high. And what does that mean in a business context? If I want to get in touch with a high-ranking official in a company, can I call him and get an appointment? No, I need to know someone who can get in touch with someone who can then call someone and set up this meeting, right? If the power distance is low, you can actually call anybody. So it's easier to get an appointment with an executive in the US and the UK if you have a valid reason. And a valid reason is obviously also what's in it for the person that you want a meeting with. But if you have a valid and good reason, you can get such an appointment. So my conclusion would be it's actually easier for you to do business outside Turkey than it is for us to do business in Turkey. This one, it has a pretty big difference. Individualism means that you are very collectively minded. You are actually making a deposit of your individuality with the group in exchange for loyalty. What does that mean? It means that if I'm in a business meeting and I'm talking to a person, I may get a version of the truth which is packaged because somebody else in the organization may have other agenda items. Where if you're dealing with somebody in the US, they will say, that's crap, right? What's in it for me? People in the US and the UK are much more driven by their own agendas, and then they are trying to adapt the organization to their agenda, rather than the other way around. So it should actually mean that it would be more easy for us here in Turkey to get honest feedback in business meetings than it would be for us outside to really interpret it. What does he mean, and what is that feedback supposed to say? Now, this one, uncertainty avoidance, is very high in Turkey. You don't like risk. And you've actually organized procedures and methods to avoid risk. While in the UK and the US, we're more prepared to accept risk. Where I come from in Denmark, this is very, very low. We're very risk ready. So what does that mean? That means if I get a meeting here in Turkey with somebody, they will say, we're not quite ready to do business with you. You're still very new, we don't know you very well, and we need to see some continuity, and you need to invest a lot in building those relationships and bring that risk down. It also is expressed that people always want to negotiate price. It's amazing how price-focused you are in Turkey. The price is what you pay, the value is what you get. So where I come from, we're much more concerned about getting value, getting up the value. And the price is another thing. But you always start by negotiating the price and don't focus on the value. So what does that mean? That means that it should actually be more easy for you to do business outside Turkey because they're more ready to take risk than it would be for us to do business in Turkey. Well, what do I see? I see that Turkish companies are much more comfortable doing business in Russia and Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan and your neighboring countries, where those cultural dimensions are even worse. So the power distance in Russia and Saudi Arabia are even higher than in Turkey. It's more difficult to get an appointment with somebody there. The individualism is sort of the same, and the uncertainty avoidance is certainly the same. So what do you benefit? So my message here is, maybe you should not do business where you're comfortable. Maybe you should do business where the business is. And use those cultural differences productively. I know from my 5 years, I've not worked here continuously 5 years, but I worked with Turkey for 5 years, that there is a lot of engineering talent in this country. It's not brilliant products that you need. It's the capability to get those products to the world markets. And I'm here to help you figure out how we can do that. I hope this 1 hour gave you some inspiration, what it takes. If you need additional input, you can read my book, and you can also follow me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. I write regularly on these issues, and I'm sure I will be back. So thank you very much, and software is the place to be. You need to embrace social media and understand your customers, be ambitious, and use culture to your advantage. Any questions?